The once quiet town of Millfield buzzed with excitement as the annual carnival rolled into town. Brightly colored tents sprouted overnight in the town's dusty fairgrounds, their vibrant hues a stark contrast against the drab landscape. Strings of twinkling lights crisscrossed the midway, casting an enchanting glow that beckoned children and adults alike. The smell of fresh popcorn, cotton candy, and hot dogs filled the air, a tantalizing aroma that promised fun and laughter. Felix the Clown was the star attraction. With his oversized shoes, bulbous red nose, and a smile painted in a garish red, he moved through the growing crowd, handing out balloons and performing small tricks. His laugh was hearty and infectious, drawing cheers from the children who followed him like the Pied Piper. But beneath his painted smile, Felix's eyes held a shadow, a hint of something darker that only the most perceptive could detect. As night fell, the carnival came alive with a dazzling display of lights and sounds. The Ferris wheel turned slowly against the backdrop of a starlit sky, its passengers squealing with delight. Barkers called out, enticing visitors to try their luck at various games of chance. The carousel played its whimsical tune, spinning a merry-go-round of prancing horses and gleeful children. Felix performed on a small stage near the center of the carnival. His act was a blend of slapstick comedy and magic tricks, designed to elicit laughter and amazement. Tonight, however, something felt off. He juggled brightly colored balls, but for a split second they seemed to transform into grinning skulls before reverting to their harmless forms. He stumbled through a routine, his usually steady hands betraying him. In the audience, a young girl named Lily watched with wide, curious eyes. She clutched a stuffed bear tightly to her chest, her other hand entwined with her mother's. There was something about Felix that captivated her, a strange magnetism she couldn't quite explain. As the show ended, Felix took a deep bow, his painted smile never faltering. The crowd erupted in applause, but he felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced around, half expecting to see something, or someone, lurking in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the bustling crowd and the garish lights of the carnival. He retreated to his trailer, seeking solace from the chaos outside. The inside of the trailer was cluttered with costumes, makeup, and old photographs of a time when the carnival had been a place of joy and wonder. Felix sat at his small dressing table, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror. As he removed his makeup, the shadow in his eyes deepened. The laughter of children echoed faintly in his ears, but it was not the joyous sound from earlier. It was distant, haunting, and filled with an eerie resonance that made his skin crawl. He rubbed his temples, trying to shake off the unease. The night had only just begun, and the carnival had many hours left before it would finally close its gates. Outside, the carnival continued its revelry, oblivious to the dark undercurrent that ran just beneath the surface. Felix knew that the arrival of the carnival brought more than just joy and entertainment. It brought with it memories of a tragedy long past and the restless spirits of those who had never truly left. As he prepared for another round of performances, Felix couldn't shake the feeling that tonight the past would come back to haunt him, and with it, the laughter of the children who had perished so tragically would return, seeking answers, and perhaps revenge. The moon hung high above Millfield, casting a pale, ghostly light over the carnival. The crowds began to thin as families headed home, but the carnival itself remained a cacophony of music, laughter, and the creaking of rides. Felix, now out of costume, wandered through the midway, his mind still troubled by the unease he felt earlier. He passed by the funhouse, its garish facade illuminated by flickering neon lights. The distorted mirrors and eerie laughter emanating from within seemed to mock him. Felix shivered and continued on, trying to shake off the feeling that something, or someone, was watching him. As he approached the edge of the fairgrounds, he heard it again. The faint, echoing laughter of children. This time, it was unmistakable. Felix stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. The laughter was soft, almost musical, but it carried an undertone of sorrow that made his blood run cold. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling. "Is someone there?" There was no reply, only the rustling of leaves in the cool night breeze. Felix took a hesitant step forward, peering into the darkness. He saw nothing but shadows and the faint outline of the woods beyond the fairgrounds. Shaking his head, he turned to leave, but the laughter came again, louder and more insistent. It seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, surrounding him. Felix's breath quickened, and he broke into a run, desperate to escape the ghostly sounds. He stumbled back to his trailer, slamming the door shut behind him. Leaning against it, he tried to steady his breathing. The laughter had stopped, but the eerie feeling lingered. Felix knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was very wrong. The next morning, Felix awoke to a carnival that seemed oblivious to the supernatural events of the previous night. Workers busied themselves with their routines, and the scent of fresh food once again filled the air. But Felix couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over him. He decided to visit the local historian, Mr. Grayson, hoping to find some answers. The historian's home was a small, cluttered cottage on the outskirts of town, filled with books and artifacts from Millfield's past. Mr. Grayson greeted Felix with a curious look, noting the pallor of the usually jovial clown. "What brings you here, Felix?" Grayson asked, gesturing for him to sit. "You look troubled." Felix explained the events of the previous night, the haunting laughter, and the sense of being watched. Grayson listened intently, his expression growing more serious by the minute. "You've heard the story, haven't you?" Grayson said quietly. "About the accident?" Felix nodded. "I've heard whispers, but I don't know the details." Grayson sighed and stood, retrieving an old newspaper clipping from a dusty bookshelf. He handed it to Felix, who scanned the headline. "Carnival tragedy. Children killed in freak accident." "It happened 15 years ago," Grayson explained. "The carnival was in town, just like now. But something went wrong. A ride malfunctioned and several children were killed. Their spirits never found peace." Felix felt a chill run down his spine. "Do you think they're haunting the carnival?" Grayson nodded. "It's possible. They might be trying to communicate, to find some sort of closure. Or perhaps they're seeking justice." As Felix left the historian's cottage, his mind raced with questions. The ghostly laughter, the feeling of being watched. It all made sense now. The spirits of the children were reaching out, and Felix was caught in the middle of their torment. That night, as the carnival lights flickered to life once more, Felix prepared for his performance with a heavy heart. He knew that the echoes of laughter he had heard were just the beginning. The spirits were restless, and their presence was growing stronger. Felix realized that he would have to face them to uncover the truth of the past, and perhaps find a way to bring them peace. But as he stepped onto the stage, the haunting laughter echoed in his ears, a grim reminder that the past was not so easily forgotten. And as the carnival roared to life around him, Felix couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Felix found it increasingly difficult to focus on his performance that evening. His movements were stiff, his jokes fell flat, and the usual sparkle in his eyes was dimmed by the weight of what he had learned. The audience sensed his unease, their laughter hesitant and sparse. When the show finally ended, Felix felt a wave of relief wash over him. Back in his trailer, Felix couldn't stop thinking about the accident. The images from the newspaper clipping haunted him. The twisted wreckage of the ride, the anguished faces of parents, the tiny covered bodies of the children. He had to know more, to understand what had really happened that fateful night. The next day, Felix decided to visit the local library. He hoped to find additional records or news articles that might shed light on the tragedy. As he pored over old newspapers and documents, a clearer picture began to emerge. The carnival ride that malfunctioned had been a popular attraction, the Whirlwind, a spinning contraption that promised thrills and excitement. On the night of the accident, something had gone horribly wrong. The safety mechanisms failed, sending the ride into a chaotic frenzy. It had spun out of control, flinging children into the air and crashing them into the ground with deadly force. Felix found a particularly detailed account from a witness, a carnival worker who had been on duty that night. According to the report, the worker had noticed something strange about the ride earlier in the evening. It seemed to operate on its own, the machinery groaning and creaking as if possessed by an unseen force. Despite these warnings, the ride continued to operate until the fatal accident occurred. As Felix read, a cold realization crept over him. The description of the strange behavior of the ride, the way it seemed to move on its own, it was eerily similar to the experiences he had been having with the children's laughter and the feeling of being watched. The spirits were not just haunting the carnival, they were manipulating it, trying to communicate their pain and anger. Felix's research also uncovered another unsettling detail. The ride's operator on the night of the accident had been a man named Victor, Felix's predecessor as the carnival clown. Victor had vanished shortly after the accident, his disappearance adding another layer of mystery to the already tragic event. Determined to find answers, Felix sought out anyone who might remember Victor. He spoke to other carnival workers, locals who had been around during the time of the accident, and even some of the older visitors. Slowly, he pieced together a portrait of a man deeply troubled by the tragedy. Victor had been a beloved figure at the carnival, but the accident had shattered him. He became a recluse, haunted by guilt and grief, before disappearing without a trace. One elderly woman, a longtime resident of Millfield, provided a crucial piece of information. She remembered seeing Victor at the town's old cemetery shortly before he vanished. He had been carrying something, a small, ornate box that he handled with great care. Felix decided to visit the cemetery. The grounds were overgrown and neglected, the gravestones weathered and crumbling. As he wandered through the rows of graves, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The shadows seemed to shift and move, and the air was heavy with a sense of foreboding. He found the grave of one of the children who had died in the accident, a small, weathered headstone with a faded inscription. Kneeling down, Felix noticed something glinting in the dirt. He brushed away the soil to reveal a small, ornate box, just as the elderly woman had described. Opening the box, Felix found a collection of mementos, a broken carnival ticket, a small stuffed animal, and a photograph of Victor with a group of children, their faces beaming with joy. Beneath these items was a note written in a shaky hand. "Forgive me," it read. "I didn't mean for this to happen. The spirits are angry and I can't find peace. If you find this, please help them. They deserve to rest." Felix's heart ached as he read the note. The spirits of the children were indeed trapped, their anger and sorrow keeping them bound to the place where they had met their untimely end. Felix knew he had to help them find peace, but he wasn't sure how. As he left the cemetery, the laughter of children echoed faintly in the distance, a reminder of the souls that remained restless. Felix vowed to uncover the truth behind the curse and to find a way to bring closure to the tragic past. The fate of the carnival and his own sanity depended on it. The following evening, as the carnival buzzed with life, Felix felt a growing sense of dread. The weight of his discoveries pressed heavily on him. Every step he took felt like he was walking deeper into a nightmare. Yet, he knew he had to keep performing. The show must go on, even if the spirits of the past refused to let him go. Felix painted his face with a forced enthusiasm, the exaggerated smile on his lips a stark contrast to the fear in his eyes. He donned his clown costume and stepped out into the carnival, the vibrant colors and lively sounds doing little to ease his tension. As he began his routine, Felix felt the presence of the spirits more acutely than ever. The children's laughter, once a distant echo, now seemed to come from just behind him. He turned abruptly several times, expecting to see ghostly figures, but there was nothing there. The audience watched, puzzled by his distracted performance. Halfway through his act, Felix attempted a simple magic trick, pulling a seemingly endless string of colorful scarves from his sleeve. The children in the audience giggled and clapped, but as he pulled the scarves, they transformed in his hands. Instead of bright, cheerful colors, they became tattered and stained, the fabric darkening as if soaked in blood. Felix dropped them in horror, the laughter of the audience morphing into gasps of shock. Desperate to regain control, Felix tried to play it off as part of the act. He moved on to his next trick, juggling a set of brightly painted balls. But as they spun through the air, the balls changed, their surfaces cracking to reveal grotesque, grinning faces. The children in the audience stared, their delight turning to fear. Felix's heart pounded as he stumbled through the rest of his performance. He could feel the spirits surrounding him, their presence growing stronger, their laughter now mingled with cries of pain. The children in the audience sensed it too, their eyes wide with a mix of fascination and terror. When the act finally ended, Felix bowed shakily and hurried off stage. The audience's applause was polite but subdued, their enthusiasm dampened by the unsettling turn of events. Felix retreated to his trailer, his hands trembling as he wiped off his makeup. The reflection in the mirror seemed to mock him, his own eyes staring back with a haunted intensity. He couldn't keep ignoring the spirits. Their manifestations were becoming more pronounced, their anger more palpable. Felix knew he had to do something before their wrath consumed him, and the entire carnival. As he sat in his trailer, the familiar laughter echoed around him, this time joined by soft whispers. Felix strained to listen, trying to make out the words. The whispers seemed to be calling him, urging him to follow. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, Felix left his trailer and followed the whispers. They led him to the funhouse, its garish entrance looming before him like a mouth ready to swallow him whole. Felix hesitated, but the whispers grew more insistent, drawing him in. Inside, the funhouse was a labyrinth of twisted mirrors and narrow passageways. The distorted reflections seemed to close in on him, the air thick with the presence of the spirits. As he navigated the maze, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. "Help us," they pleaded. "Find the truth." Felix's heart raced as he stumbled upon a hidden door, cleverly disguised as part of the funhouse's wall. He pushed it open and stepped into a small, dimly lit room. In the center of the room was an old, rusted chest. He opened the chest, revealing a collection of items: broken toys, faded photographs, and a ledger detailing the names of the children who had died in the accident. Among the items was a journal, its pages filled with Victor's tortured handwriting. Felix read through the journal, his horror growing with each page. Victor had been aware of the ride's malfunction before the accident, but had been pressured by the carnival's owner to keep it running. Guilt-ridden and tormented by the spirits, Victor had tried to appease them by collecting their belongings and writing their names, hoping to give them some semblance of peace. The The final entry in the journal was a plea for forgiveness, a desperate cry for someone to end the curse that had bound the children's spirits to the carnival. Victor had believed that by acknowledging their pain and taking responsibility, he could help them move on. But he had failed, and now the burden had fallen to Felix. Determined to finish what Victor had started, Felix gathered the items from the chest and left the funhouse. He knew what he had to do: confront the carnival's owner and reveal the truth, no matter the consequences. Only by exposing the past and seeking justice for the children could he hope to free their spirits and himself from the haunting laughter that echoed through the night. As he walked back through the darkened carnival, Felix felt a strange sense of resolve. The spirits had chosen him for a reason, and he would not let them down. The final act of this tragic play was about to begin, and Felix was ready to face the ghosts of the past. The night was thick with an oppressive silence as Felix approached the carnival owner's trailer. The garish lights and joyful sounds seemed to fade away, replaced by an eerie stillness. Felix's heart pounded in his chest, but he knew he had to confront the truth and bring closure to the restless spirits. He knocked on the door, and after a moment, it creaked open. Jasper Morgan, the carnival's owner, stood in the doorway. His eyes, once sharp and calculating, now looked weary and sunken. He seemed almost to expect Felix's visit. "Felix," Jasper said, his voice gravelly. "What brings you here so late?" "I need to talk to you," Felix replied, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "It's about the accident, about the children." Jasper's expression darkened, and he stepped aside to let Felix in. The trailer was cluttered with old posters and trinkets from the carnival's long history. Felix took a deep breath and began to recount what he had discovered: the malfunctioning ride, Victor's guilt, and the restless spirits of the children. As Felix spoke, Jasper's face grew more drawn, his hands trembling slightly. When Felix finished, Jasper sank into a worn armchair, burying his face in his hands. "I always knew this day would come," Jasper said, his voice muffled. "I thought I could keep it buried, that no one would ever find out. But the past has a way of catching up with you." Felix remained silent, allowing Jasper to gather his thoughts. "The night of the accident," Jasper continued, "I knew the ride was faulty. But we were behind on our payments, struggling to keep the carnival afloat. I pressured Victor to keep it running. I thought I could fix it before anything happened. I was wrong." Jasper's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he looked up at Felix. "When those children died, it destroyed me. I've been haunted by their faces ever since. Victor tried to make amends, but the guilt consumed him. And now it's consuming you." Felix handed Jasper the items from the chest, the broken toys, the photographs, and the ledger. "These children deserve peace, Jasper. We have to acknowledge what happened and take responsibility." Jasper nodded slowly. "You're right. We can't keep hiding from the truth." Together, Felix and Jasper planned a memorial for the children to be held the following evening. They would invite the townspeople, the carnival workers, and anyone who had been affected by the tragedy. It was time to face the past and seek forgiveness. As Felix left Jasper's trailer, he felt a sense of relief mingled with apprehension. The spirits had guided him this far, but there was still much to be done. He returned to his own trailer, hoping for a few hours of rest before the busy day ahead. That night, the whispers returned, but they were different. No longer filled with anger and sorrow, they seemed almost grateful. Felix could make out fragments of words, soft and soothing. "Thank you," the voices whispered. "Help us find peace." Felix drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by dreams of the children. They appeared to him, their faces no longer twisted in pain, but serene and hopeful. They led him through the carnival, showing him scenes from their lives and the moments they cherished. When he awoke, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. Felix felt a renewed sense of purpose. Today, he would help the children find peace, and in doing so, find peace himself. The carnival opened as usual, but there was a somber undertone to the day's festivities. Word of the memorial had spread, and many visitors brought flowers and mementos, placing them at the entrance to the carnival. Felix spent the day preparing for the evening ceremony, his heart heavy with anticipation. As the sun began to set, the carnival lights flickered to life, casting an ethereal glow over the gathering crowd. Felix and Jasper stood at the front, facing the people who had come to honor the memory of the lost children. Jasper spoke first, his voice trembling with emotion. He recounted the events of that tragic night, acknowledging his own culpability and expressing his deepest regret. Felix followed, sharing the story of Victor's guilt and the restless spirits that had haunted the carnival. "We are here tonight," Felix said, "to remember the children who lost their lives and to seek their forgiveness. We must face the past to heal and move forward." As he spoke, Felix felt a chill in the air, and the faint sound of laughter echoed around them. The crowd seemed to hear it too, their eyes widening in awe and fear. Felix continued, his voice steady. "We dedicate this memorial to the memory of those we lost. May they find peace, and may we honor their memory by ensuring such a tragedy never happens again." Felix and Jasper unveiled a plaque with the names of the children, surrounded by flowers and candles. The crowd fell silent, many wiping away tears. Felix closed his eyes, silently praying that the spirits had found the closure they needed. The air grew warmer, and the oppressive weight that had hung over the carnival lifted. Felix felt a sense of calm wash over him, and for the first time in years, the laughter of children felt joyous and free. As the crowd dispersed, Felix stood alone by the memorial, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He knew that the journey was not over, but he had taken the first step towards redemption. The spirits of the children had been heard, and their whispers in the dark had finally found a voice. That night, as Felix prepared for bed, he heard the laughter of the children one last time. But this time, it was different, soft, joyful, and filled with gratitude. Felix smiled, knowing that he had helped them find peace. The curse had been lifted, and the carnival, at long last, was free from the haunting echoes of the past. The memorial had brought a sense of closure, but Felix knew there was more to uncover. The spirits had found some peace, but their presence still lingered, as if something remained unresolved. Felix couldn't shake the feeling that the true cause of the tragedy was yet to be discovered. Determined to uncover the full truth, Felix decided to delve deeper into the events leading up to the accident. He sought out anyone who might remember that fateful night, hoping to find clues that could explain the ride's sudden malfunction. The carnival workers who had been hesitant to speak before were now more willing to share their memories. Felix started with Max, the old ride mechanic who had been with the carnival for decades. Max's face was lined with age and sorrow, his eyes filled with memories of a darker time. "I remember that night like it was yesterday," Max said, his voice gruff but steady. "The Whirlwind was one of our most popular rides, but I always had a bad feeling about it. The machinery was temperamental, and I tried to keep it in good shape, but it always seemed off." Felix listened intently as Max described the strange occurrences he had noticed in the days leading up to the accident. The ride had been making unusual noises, the gears grinding and clanking even when it wasn't in operation. Max had reported his concerns to Jasper, but the carnival owner, desperate to keep the attraction running, had dismissed them. There was something else, Max added, lowering his voice. The night before the accident, I saw Victor talking to a man I didn't recognize. They were arguing about something, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. The next day, the ride went haywire. Felix's mind raced with possibilities. Who was the mysterious man, and what role had he played in the accident? Determined to find out, Felix tracked down more witnesses, piecing together fragments of information. He spoke to Lisa, a former ticket seller, who remembered seeing Victor in a heated discussion with a stranger near the funhouse. The man had left abruptly and Victor had looked deeply troubled. I never saw that man again, Lisa said, her brow furrowed in thought. But I remember thinking that Victor seemed scared, like he knew something bad was going to happen. The clues pointed to a larger conspiracy, but Felix needed more concrete evidence. He decided to visit the town's archives, hoping to find records that might shed light on the mysterious man's identity and his connection to the carnival. The archives were housed in a dimly lit building on the outskirts of town. Dusty files and yellowed newspapers filled the shelves, the air thick with the scent of aged paper. Felix spent hours combing through the records, searching for anything that might explain the strange events surrounding the whirlwind. His persistence paid off when he stumbled upon a series of documents detailing the carnival's financial struggles. Among them was a contract signed by Jasper and a man named Richard Hale. The contract stipulated a loan to the carnival, with the whirlwind listed as collateral. The terms were harsh, and the penalties for default severe. Felix's heart pounded as he read further. Richard Hale was a known loan shark, notorious for his ruthless tactics. The documents revealed that Jasper had been desperate to keep the carnival afloat and had turned to Hale for help. The pressure to keep the whirlwind running despite its faults now made sense. Jasper had been under immense financial strain. Felix's next step was to find Richard Hale. With the help of the local police, he tracked Hale to a rundown office on the edge of town. Hale was a menacing figure, his sharp eyes and cold demeanor sending a shiver down Felix's spine. "What do you want?" Hale asked, his voice dripping with suspicion. "I'm here about the carnival," Felix replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I know you loaned Jasper money and I believe you're connected to the accident." Hale's eyes narrowed. "That's a bold accusation. You better have proof." Felix produced the contract and the notes he had gathered. Hale's expression darkened as he scanned the documents. "Fine," Hale said with a sneer. "I admit I loaned Jasper the money. He was desperate and I saw an opportunity, but I had nothing to do with the accident." Felix pressed on, recounting the eyewitness accounts of Victor's arguments with an unknown man. Hale's demeanor shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. "Victor," Hale muttered. "That fool tried to back out of the deal. He wanted to shut down the ride, said it was too dangerous. But I needed that ride operational. I pressured Jasper and he pressured Victor. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." The truth hit Felix like a blow. The accident had been the result of greed and desperation, a tragic consequence of human failings. The children's spirits had been trapped by the weight of the lies and deceit that had surrounded their deaths. Felix left Hale's office, his mind reeling. He now had the final piece of the puzzle, but he needed to share it with the others. Returning to the carnival, Felix gathered Jasper and the remaining workers. "We know what happened," Felix said, his voice firm. "The accident was caused by a series of terrible decisions, but we can't change the past. What we can do is make amends and honor the memory of those we lost. Jasper, his face etched with guilt, nodded. You're right, Felix. It's time to come clean and do the right thing. Together, they decided to hold a second memorial, this time revealing the full truth to the townspeople. They would apologize for their actions and take steps to ensure the carnival was a safe and joyful place once more. As the night of the second memorial approached, Felix felt a sense of calm. The spirits had guided him to the truth, and now it was time to bring their story to light. The carnival, once a place of joy turned to sorrow, would finally be a place of healing and redemption. The echoes of the past would no longer haunt the present, and the laughter of the children would once again fill the air, free from the shadows of tragedy. The carnival grounds were bathed in an eerie twilight as Felix prepared for the second memorial. The truth had been uncovered, and now it was time to reveal it to the townspeople. Felix hoped that by doing so, the spirits of the children would finally find peace. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of the coming revelations hanging heavy over the gathering crowd. Felix stood at the center of the carnival, surrounded by the workers and townspeople who had come to hear the truth. Jasper stood beside him, his face drawn and somber. The memorial had been hastily arranged, but the crowd was larger than Felix had anticipated. News of the first memorial and the ongoing investigation had spread quickly, drawing people from all over town. Taking a deep breath, Felix began to speak. He recounted the events leading up to the tragic accident, sparing no detail. He spoke of the whirlwind's malfunction, the pressure placed on Victor, and the role Richard Hale had played in the entire affair. The crowd listened in stunned silence, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock, sorrow, and anger. Jasper stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. I am deeply sorry for what happened. I made terrible decisions out of desperation, and it cost innocent lives. I cannot undo the past, but I can promise that we will do everything in our power to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. The crowd murmured, their anger tempered by the sincerity of Jasper's apology. Felix felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to move forward. Suddenly the air grew colder and a hush fell over the crowd. The flickering lights of the carnival dimmed, casting long shadows across the grounds. Felix felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the spirits were making their presence known. The laughter of children echoed through the night, soft and mournful. The crowd looked around, their expressions a mix of fear and wonder. Felix stepped forward, holding the items he had retrieved from the funhouse. These children have been trapped here, their spirits bound by the tragedy that took their lives, Felix said, his voice steady. We must help them find peace. He placed the broken toys, photographs, and the ledger with the children's names at the base of the memorial plaque. The air around them seemed to shimmer, the spirits drawing closer. Felix closed his eyes, focusing on the connection he felt with the children. We acknowledge your pain and your loss. We are sorry for what happened to you. You deserved better, and we failed you. Please, find it in your hearts to forgive us. The laughter grew louder, but it was different now. Softer, more forgiving. Felix opened his eyes and saw faint, ethereal figures of the children, their faces no longer twisted in sorrow, but serene and peaceful. One of the spirits, a young girl with a tattered dress and a radiant smile, stepped forward. She looked at Felix with eyes full of gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. We can rest now. With those words, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the night. The oppressive weight that had hung over the carnival lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and closure. The crowd watched in awe, many wiping away tears. As the last of the spirits disappeared, the lights of the carnival brightened once more, casting a warm, welcoming glow. Felix felt a profound sense of relief. The curse had been lifted, and the spirits of the children had found peace. Jasper turned to Felix, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You did it, Felix. You freed them." Felix nodded, a weary but satisfied smile on his face. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us. We faced the truth and made amends." The crowd slowly began to disperse, their hearts lighter and their spirits uplifted. The carnival workers hugged Felix and each other, their bonds strengthened by the ordeal they had faced together. As the night wore on, the carnival continued its festivities, but the atmosphere was different. The joy and laughter were genuine, free from the shadow of the past. Felix wandered through the grounds, marveling at the transformation. The carnival, once a place of sorrow, had become a beacon of hope and renewal. Felix knew that the journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges and difficulties, but they had faced the darkest of times and emerged stronger. The curse had been revealed and lifted, and the carnival could finally move forward, honoring the memory of the children and ensuring that such a tragedy never happened again. As Felix looked up at the twinkling lights and listened to the laughter of children, he felt a sense of peace he had never known before. The past had been laid to rest, and the future was filled with promise. The carnival and Felix himself had been given a second chance. The carnival's newfound peace was short-lived. Though the spirits of the children seemed at rest, Felix couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The air grew heavy once more, and a dark tension settled over the carnival, like an ominous storm waiting to break. Felix found himself plagued by nightmares, his dreams filled with the twisted, ghostly faces of the children. They called out to him, their voices echoing in his mind even after he woke. Sleep became a luxury he could scarcely afford, his nights haunted by restless visions and his days consumed by a growing sense of dread. It wasn't long before the strange occurrences resumed. The carnival rides began to malfunction again, moving on their own, the machinery groaning and clanking in the dead of night. The workers reported seeing shadowy figures flitting through the darkness, whispers of ghostly laughter trailing in their wake. Felix's performances grew more erratic, his once flawless routines marred by inexplicable errors and supernatural interference. Balls turned into skulls mid-juggle, scarves became serpents, and the audience watched in horrified fascination. The more Felix tried to maintain control, the more it seemed to slip away, as if an unseen force was toying with him. One evening, as Felix prepared for another performance, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. His reflection seemed distorted, the painted smile on his face twisting into a grotesque grin. He recoiled, his heart pounding, and the image returned to normal. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the malevolent presence was closing in on him. The carnival workers began to distance themselves from Felix, their whispers filled with fear and suspicion. Rumors spread like wildfire. The curse wasn't lifted, the spirits were angry, and Felix was at the center of it all. The once close-knit community began to fracture, paranoia and fear taking root. Felix's descent into madness was swift and unrelenting. He wandered the carnival grounds at night, chasing shadows and whispering to himself. He was haunted by the memories of the children, their faces contorted in pain and sorrow. The weight of their suffering pressed down on him, driving him to the brink of insanity. One night, as the carnival lay shrouded in darkness, Felix found himself drawn to the funhouse. The gaudy facade loomed before him, the distorted mirrors and eerie laughter beckoning him inside. He stepped through the entrance, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. Inside, the funhouse was a labyrinth of twisted mirrors and narrow passageways, the reflections warping and shifting as Felix moved. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls, filling his mind with a cacophony of voices. "Help us," the voices cried. "Find the truth." Felix stumbled through the maze, his heart pounding in his chest. The mirror seemed to close in on him, the distorted reflections mocking his every move. He felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of his own guilt and the relentless whispers of the spirits. In the heart of the funhouse, Felix found himself face to face with a mirror that reflected not his own image, but the ghostly forms of the children. Their eyes were filled with a haunting sorrow, their faces twisted in pain. "Why won't you leave us?" Felix cried, his voice trembling. "I did everything I could. I tried to help you." The ghostly figures stared back at him, their expressions filled with a strange mix of pity and accusation. "It's not over," they whispered. "The truth is still hidden." Felix felt a chill run down his spine. What more could there be? He had uncovered the corruption, revealed the truth, and sought forgiveness. But the spirits were insistent, their presence growing more intense. Desperate for answers, Felix fled the funhouse and returned to his trailer. He rifled through the journal he had found, searching for any clue he might have missed. As he read through Victor's tortured writings, a single entry caught his eye. "There is darkness here, something deeper than the accident. I feel it watching, waiting. The children's spirits are restless, but there is another presence, something malevolent. I fear it is this that keeps them trapped, not just their pain." Felix's blood ran cold. He had been so focused on the tragedy of the children that he had overlooked the possibility of a darker force at work. The curse wasn't just about the accident. It was about something more sinister, something that had taken root in the very heart of the carnival. Determined to uncover the truth, Felix delved deeper into the history of the carnival. He spoke to anyone who might have information, poring over old records and documents. What he discovered chilled him to the bone. The land on which the carnival was built had a dark history. Long before the carnival arrived, it had been the site of a notorious orphanage, run by a cruel and sadistic caretaker named Gideon Blackwood. The orphanage had burned down under mysterious circumstances, the children trapped inside perishing in the flames. Rumors had always persisted that Gideon had been involved in dark rituals, seeking to bind the children's souls to the land. Felix realized that the spirits of the children from the accident were not the only ones haunting the carnival. The malevolent presence Victor had sensed was Gideon's spirit, twisted and enraged, feeding off the suffering and fear. Gideon's dark rituals had left a stain on the land, a curse that persisted long after his death. The truth was finally clear. The accident had awakened the dormant spirits of the orphanage, their pain and sorrow amplified by Gideon's malevolence. The carnival's presence had stirred the darkness, trapping the spirits in a cycle of torment. Felix knew what he had to do. To lift the curse, he had to confront Gideon's spirit and put an end to the dark rituals that had bound the children's souls. It was a daunting task, but Felix was determined. He could not let the cycle of suffering continue. As Felix prepared for the final confrontation, he felt a strange sense of calm. The madness that had gripped him began to fade, replaced by a steely resolve. He had faced the darkness within himself, and now he would face the darkness that haunted the carnival. The final act was about to begin, and Felix was ready to bring an end to the nightmare. The spirits of the children had guided him this far, and he would not let them down. The descent into madness had brought him to the brink, but it had also given him the strength to face the true evil that lurked in the shadows. As the night deepened, Felix stood alone in the heart of the carnival, ready to confront the dark force that had haunted them all. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, but this time it was a beacon of hope, guiding him towards the final battle. The night was thick with tension as Felix prepared for the ultimate showdown. Armed with the knowledge of the carnival's dark history, he steeled himself to face the malevolent spirit of Gideon Blackwood. The carnival grounds were eerily silent, the usual sounds of merriment replaced by an oppressive stillness. Felix had gathered the remaining carnival workers, explaining what he had discovered. They listened in stunned silence, their faces pale with fear. But as Felix spoke, their fear turned to resolve. They knew they had to support him, to stand together against the evil that had plagued the carnival for so long. Jasper, his face lined with determination, handed Felix a small, ornate box. "Victor left this behind," he said quietly. He believed it contained the key to breaking the curse. I think it's time we found out if he was right. Felix took the box, feeling its weight in his hands. He opened it to reveal a collection of strange symbols and an old, tattered journal. The journal contained instructions for a ritual meant to cleanse the land of Gideon's dark influence and release the trapped spirits. It was a daunting task, but Felix knew it was their only hope. As midnight approached, Felix led the workers to the center of the carnival, where the whirlwind ride once stood. The ride had long been dismantled, but the area still held a palpable sense of unease. Felix arranged the symbols in a circle, following the instructions in the journal. The workers formed a ring around him, their faces set with grim determination. Felix began the ritual, chanting the words written in the journal. The air grew colder, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet. The oppressive darkness that had hung over the carnival intensified, as if Gideon's spirit was resisting their efforts. As Felix continued to chant, the laughter of children echoed through the night, growing louder and more insistent. The workers glanced around nervously, but Felix pressed on, his voice steady and strong. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the center of the circle, a twisted, ghostly form with burning eyes. It was Gideon Blackwood, his presence radiating malevolence. He glared at Felix, his voice a hiss of anger. "You dare to challenge me?" Gideon spat. "You think you can undo what I've wrought?" Felix stood his ground, meeting Gideon's gaze. "Your time is over, Gideon. You've caused enough suffering. It's time to end this." Gideon laughed, a harsh, grating sound that sent chills down Felix's spine. "You're nothing," he sneered. "You cannot defeat me." But Felix was not alone. The spirits of the children gathered around him, their forms glowing with an ethereal light. They faced Gideon, their expressions filled with determination and defiance. "We will not be your prisoners any longer," the young girl from Felix's dreams said, her voice clear and strong. "We deserve to be free." Gideon recoiled, his form flickering as the children's light grew brighter. Felix continued the ritual, the words flowing from his lips with increasing power. The symbols began to glow, and a wave of energy surged through the circle. The ground shook violently, and Gideon's form wavered. He screamed in rage, but the children's light was too strong. The malevolent spirit began to disintegrate, his dark presence dissolving into the night. As Gideon's scream faded, the oppressive weight that had hung over the carnival lifted. The air grew warm, and the laughter of children turned joyous and free. The spirits had been released, their pain and sorrow finally put to rest. Felix fell to his knees, exhausted but filled with a profound sense of relief. The workers rushed to his side, their faces beaming with gratitude and admiration. "You did it, Felix," Jasper said, his voice choked with emotion. You saved us all." Felix looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't just me," he said. "We did it together." The carnival workers embraced Felix, their bond stronger than ever. The curse had been lifted, and the carnival was finally free from the dark shadow that had haunted it for so long. As dawn broke over the horizon, the carnival came to life with renewed energy. The rides began to move, the lights flickered on, and the sounds of laughter filled the air. Felix watched with a sense of pride and fulfillment, knowing that they had overcome the darkness and brought light back to the carnival. The journey had been long and harrowing, but it had been worth it. The spirits of the children were at peace, and the carnival could once again be a place of joy and wonder. As Felix walked through the carnival, the children's laughter echoing around him, he felt a sense of closure. The past had been laid to rest, and the future was filled with promise. The curse had been revealed and broken, and the carnival at long last was truly free.